70,000 people are here, and Bob Dylan is the reason for it.
Inspired by their true story.
For anyone who's gonna hold your attention on a stage, you have to kind of be a freak.
Are you a freak?
Hope so.
And starring Timothée Chalamet as Bob Dylan. He defied everyone.
Turn it down!
Play loud!
To change everything.
Make some noise, BD.
Timothée Chalamet, Edward Norton, Elle Fanning, Monica Barbaro. A complete unknown. Only in theaters Christmas Day. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent.
With Lululemon, the real gift happens when your holiday checklist is complete. When you give them the fan-favorite Everywhere belt bag, you both get to experience more of this. And when the ultra-soothing Rest Feel slides are their gift, you both get more moments like this. This holiday, Lululemon makes it easy to find last-minute gifts that bring presents. Open the moment. Shop now at Lululemon.com.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means. It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop last-minute deals now.
If you're not subscribed so you can listen ad-free, what are you waiting for? Subscribe on Apple or Patreon so that you can listen ad-free and get access to our subscription-only journal entry episodes. Thanks so much to those of you who are already subscribed. Your support keeps the Murder Diaries running. Welcome to a special case updates episode of the Murder Diaries. I'm Paige.
And I'm Natalee. And as we close out 2024, we wanted to do something a little different, like Paige just said. In today's episode, we're giving you an update on some of the cases we've covered over the past couple of years. In 2024 alone, we've seen some new developments, fresh leads, and in some cases, even major breakthroughs. We'll walk you through what's changed, what's been uncovered, and where these cases stand now.
Used to think it's in my head, but I'm walking with the dead.
I want to start with an update in the Breanna Muriwai case. Breanna Muriwai is a Maori woman from New Zealand who at 22 years old in August of 2022 went missing, and her waterlogged handbag was found on her grandmother's lawn. An article from September states that a rural home that was the subject of a public search for Breanna was burnt to the ground in a, quote, deliberately lit blaze. The home was on Rangiwahia Road in the area where Breanna went missing. Unfortunately, the fire did destroy the home. Just hours earlier, before this fire happened, hundreds of people had descended on the property as part of a public search that was organized by Breanna's mom, Jasmine. In a social media post from her mom after, she said that they had found things of interest, thank goodness, before this fire, and they were able to pass those items off to the police. So obviously, because this is still an open case, there isn't a ton of information about what was found and what the police are doing with it because it's only been a few months. But in terms of this case update, I'll leave you with detectives and fire investigators did sift through what was left of the old wooden home. And hopefully what they were able to salvage before this fire gives some answers.
Does not sound like an accident either.
You're right. And that reminds me how even the article claims deliberately lit blaze. I felt like that was such powerful wording. Deliberately lit blaze. I also wonder who would have lit that house on fire. What else possibly could have been lost in that fire that wasn't found? Thank goodness they found stuff.
And what's going to come from the stuff that they did find?
Exactly. You would think whoever lit it on fire knew that they had gotten enough that they just had to burn the whole house down. But I also wonder if they found main pieces of evidence, if you will, that place Breanna there, what's the point of burning it down? Was there more? Are you just at a loss because now you're scared, so burning it down is the only thing you could think to do? I have a lot of questions, and I hope that Jasmine gets answers. And I think they must be getting pretty close. It seems like a huge sign of, hey, you got too close.
And on top of that, that person just added another charge of arson to their long laundry list of things that they've done.
Can we talk about that, please? The thought process that these people that clearly are involved in or have caused harm to other people, the way that their mind works, I suppose I shouldn't get it, but I will say I don't get it. Hey, let me add another charge. Let me do something else messy and stupid. Lighting a house up on fire is messy.
And desperate.
And desperate. It shows the desperation. That's the word.
We have another case update for you from one that we covered in February of 2023. And this is for the case of Asha Degree. Now, for those who may not remember the details of her case, here's a quick overview. On the night of February 14th, 2000, Asha, who was a fourth grader at the time, vanished from her home. Her family last saw her around 2:30 in the morning when she was asleep in the bedroom she shared with her brother. And this is according to the FBI. A few hours later,
this message is sponsored by Greenlight. We all know the old saying about teaching a man to fish. And as parents, we want our kids to learn the things that will set them up for success. So this holiday season, give kids money skills that last well beyond 2024 with Greenlight. Greenlight is a debit card and money app made for families, where kids learn how to save, invest, and spend wisely with parental controls built in. Sign up today at greenlight.com/Spotify. Greenlight.com/Spotify.
Around 4 a.m., drivers on NC-18 in Shelby reported seeing Asha walking alone along the roadside. They came forward after recognizing her from a missing persons flyer on the news. And despite this spotting and despite the years of searching for her and these years of uncertainty, law enforcement has never stopped pursuing leads in this case, as evidenced by a series of search warrants issued in 3 counties, which were made public in September of this year, 2024. And on September 11th, members of the media gathered at a property on Cherryville Road in Shelby, where Cleveland County deputies, the NC State Bureau of Investigation, and the FBI conducted a search with canine units. Sheriff Alan Norman confirmed that the search was related to Asha's case, which is incredible given that, it's been 24 years. So this community really hasn't given up on Asha. They want answers for themselves and for the family. So during this search, investigators towed a green car from the property. And while it's still unclear if it's connected to her disappearance, it did happen. And it was of note to make it into several articles about these updates in her case. And on top of that, there are also suspects in the case whose names were included in the search warrants filed in court. This is major news. Police searched the properties of Roy Lee Dedman and Connie Elliott Dedman on Cherryville Road and Hawthorne Lane. And an attorney for them has stated that they are fully cooperating with law enforcement and are denying any involvement in Asha's case. But the fact that they have 2 persons of interest now in Asha's case is a huge deal. And I do want to read the full statement from the Cleveland County Sheriff that was released on September 16th. The joint investigation into the disappearance of 9-year-old Asha Degree continues. The search warrants executed last week by the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office and our state and federal partners were returned and are now public record. We are not providing copies of the warrants per NC Records policies. Copies can be picked up by journalists at the courthouse during regular business hours. We continue to follow evidence to locate Asha and determine what happened to her in the early morning hours of February 14th, 2000, after she walked away from her home. At this time, no remains have been recovered and no one has been arrested. If you have information directly related to our investigation, call the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office at 704-484-4756. It continues, I know our community is anxious to learn about every aspect of our ongoing investigation. While we appreciate your support, I urge you to put yourself in the place of Asha's family, who for 24 years have entrusted law enforcement to do everything possible to find her. Please do not spread or share rumors on social media. Official information will be released by my office when appropriate. Pray for Asha, her family, and everyone who has worked for decades to locate Shelby's sweetheart.
Wow. Something that stuck out to me was that direct statement to the journalists of, we aren't going to say the names, but they are included in the warrant. So go and get them during normal business hours. I wonder the tone that was. Is it of annoyance or is it of, hey, yeah, go for it? I don't know.
I interpret it as him trying to do everything by the book and not wanting to say names if he's unable to legally, but he wants people to know where they can access and that they can access the names. And as I read the names of the people, they have come out in publications about the updates in her case. So they're out there. Journalists did follow suit and they ended up getting copies of those warrants.
I think it was definitely courteous of him to tell, because I know that police have an interesting relationship with journalists, right? They need them so they can get information, but also we know that journalists sometimes can overstep certain bounds. I mean, we work in media as well. We have a podcast, right? We've heard from families when right times and not good times are to discuss these cases, and it can impact. So it's just interesting to me, like, hey, journalists, here you go. That's where you could go get them. But yeah, you're probably right. Maybe it's just more black and white. I won't say the names. If you're going to bug me for them, there they are, kind of thing.
I loved the ending of his statement as well. I felt like you could really feel how invested he is in Asha's case. I mean,
you could feel that.
Yeah. You could feel that. You could feel that he wants nothing more than for her family to get answers and how dear Asha is to the community. I mean, they call her Shelby's sweetheart.
That stuck out to me too. Shelby's sweetheart. Not only is the community calling her that, it's during like an official statement. It really shows you how much that name resonates with the sheriff. We do have an arrest in a case that we covered in October. Mercedes Vega. She unfortunately was murdered and found in the backseat of a burning vehicle on April 17th, 2023. A man named Sincere Hayes was arrested in November and has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder, kidnapping, armed robbery, and theft of means of transportation charges through his attorney in the Maricopa County Superior Court, which is in Arizona. He's 22 years old and was arrested on November 11th in Tennessee and then was extradited. His bond was set at $2 million cash only. That's huge. According to an article from December 4th, literally a week ago when we're recording this, her mom said that this development has inched her closer to a sense of closure. But, and this is so heartbreaking, it's not helping her understand the grim circumstances surrounding the killing anymore than when she first found out that her daughter was murdered. She goes on to say, when I finally get all the pieces of this puzzle together, I don't know if I'll be more mad, the same amount of mad, or less mad. I'm sure there are moms out there that don't want to know, she added. I want to know. Since he's been arrested just about a month ago, there have been no details offered about a motive or anything else. So everything's pretty hush-hush, besides what's obvious and can be seen with the physical eyeballs, that he was arrested and has pleaded not guilty.
That seems pretty standard, though, because it is still really fresh.
Agreed. And $2 million all cash. Arizona's not messing around.
As they shouldn't.
I'm glad they have an arrest, and I'm hopeful for answers regarding the case. I just really feel for Erica. I know she is searching, which is her mom. Her mom's name's Erica. I know she's searching for those answers, and she wants to know. So I hope that it brings her closure, because it will bring pain knowing what she suffered through if he ever offers up any kind of confession eventually, which we've seen that happen as things unfold in the due process. You know, sometimes they do take out a not guilty plea and then enter that guilty plea or offer a confession because it's going to make certain things quicker, faster, easier, unfortunately, on them, as well as the entire process. But we're here for you, Erica. We hope that you get some of what you're looking for with what happened to your beautiful daughter.
And I think it's a case that we'll be following on our own just to see where it ends up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Another case I'd like to revisit is the unsolved murder of Yolanda Bindics. It's a case that we covered last year. For this particular one, we were fortunate to work alongside her daughter, Allie, who actually participated in an exclusive interview. That interview was really special because Allie was willing to get vulnerable with us, and she shed light on her mom's case and the pain of not having closure and the pain of not having her mom growing up. She even, in fact, said that she has no memories of her mom except the ones that were told to her because she was so young. And that statement will always stick with me.
You and I are both so close to our moms that, at least for me, pains me to hear, because I couldn't imagine my mom not being here and all of the wonderful things I have been blessed to experience because I love her so much and because we are so close. So I really feel for her not having those memories and thinking on that. I can't imagine the pain of, I don't have memories of my mom because somebody took her life. It's sick.
It really is heartbreaking. To give a quick recap about the case, Yolanda Bindics was a 25-year-old mother of 4 who went missing on August 10th, 2004 after failing to return home from her shift at a family dollar store on Fluvanna Avenue out in New York. Her disappearance set off a multi-year investigation, but it wasn't until 2 years later that a hunter discovered her remains at a state forest in the town of Charlotte. Now, unfortunately, despite years of investigation, there's been no arrest. However, in June of 2022, and this was covered in the episode, but I do need to mention it to get where we're going, the county sheriff's office unsolved cases team was reassigned to revisit this case, and they were bringing new attention to the mystery of who killed Yolanda. We then fast forward to this year, 2024, there's been a significant development. Investigators have officially named a sole person of interest, Clarence Cart. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because he's the father of Yolanda's youngest child. Not Allie, but her younger sister.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
There's surveillance footage, which is mentioned in the episode, that shows Cart leaving a quick fill store on Fluvanna Avenue at the same time that Yolanda was working across the street. And recently, and we're talking within the last couple of months, the sheriff's office released new photos of Cart from inside the gas station, along with an image of the vehicle he was driving the night Yolanda was killed. They've also set up a tip line for anyone with information, and you can call that at 716-703-5955. The sheriff did reveal that Cart now lives in Florida and is believed to frequently change locations, which makes it really hard to track him down. And he's resided in Marion County and Citrus County, including areas like Crystal River and Homosassa. This is another case that will continue to follow closely as it unfolds because it really does strike a chord with both of us. If you have any information that you could help bring justice for Yolanda or her family, please consider reaching out to the tip line that I just mentioned. Stay tuned for any other updates that may come about.
I wonder, besides proximity, because sometimes smaller towns, it might not be that weird that you're across the street from where somebody who was murdered was, right? They're smaller towns, not a lot of places to go. Obviously, with having a relationship and being so close in proximity, it should be looked at. But it makes me wonder what else is there in the case that they can't say that makes them feel like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
this is something.
In an article I was reading, they were able to finally cross out one of the other persons of interest. It was a man that she was dating who happened to be on the police force, who didn't excuse himself from the investigation until maybe days after it had already started. And they've always had an eye on Clarence Cart because Yolanda and Clarence did have a contentious relationship and he was known to be dangerous. But they were never able to narrow it down to one person, and they released photos that haven't been seen before. And so it really isn't looking good for him now that they are zeroing in on him.
I'm sure they have more reason to be interested in him that they can't say for the sake of the case because they can't show their hand, right?
Exactly that. I think there's a lot that we aren't allowed to know at this point in the investigation, but they are letting us know what we can and what they're allowed to say.
I want to talk about a case I think that struck both of us. Jenny Lynn, who was murdered in 1994 in her own home. She was home alone, and it took them a while to see the broken window because it was kind of covered by, and you could see this on the blog, it was covered by this kind of decorative curtain. So it took investigators a little bit to kind of figure out, like, where did this person come in from? And obviously, if we're talking about it, is currently unsolved. But a tribute for the 14-year-old who was murdered in 1994 was held in May of this year. Jenny was a talented musician, so it's so fitting that it was a musical type memorial. Her parents say that the quote, wheels of justice have moved agonizingly slow and time has not healed their pain. The Alameda County Sheriff, which is in the Bay Area of California, did attend this memorial to support the family. And she said that Jenny's case is still a priority, even after 30 and a half years. They're hoping that genetic genealogy will be able to help solve this case at this point. They do have DNA. And she says of the DNA, we definitely have DNA that we can work with. But in this point in time, we just don't have anything to match it with. Our investigators are in touch with people who are developing new processes as far as forensically, and those efforts are ongoing. So this case may be solved, but I am telling you, it is going to, and I don't want to sound too flippant, but it's going to kill me if her father passes before they have answers. This man in interviews, I almost can't watch his interviews. He loves and misses his daughter so much, as do everyone in our case. I don't want to trivialize the rest of our cases. It's just that some of his interviews have just really hit me specifically.
We all have that case where it hits us a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
That quote that you read is really devastating to hear, of how they were saying it's just taken so long. I can't imagine 30 years without knowing what happened to your daughter.
The house is actually still standing, but the parents do not live there anymore. They actually don't live in Northern California anymore either. I could imagine why they would not want to live there. Unfortunately, the scene of where she was murdered was the primary ensuite bathroom. And that's unfortunately what her parents came home to.
Let's hope that DNA brings some answers. There's another case that is similar in the fact that it does take place at the victim's home. It's one we covered in February of 2023. That's when we explored the tragic and suspicious death of Ellen Greenberg. We were super grateful to have the opportunity to speak with her family, who were generous and shared their insights and resources, and were able to shed light on Ellen's case and their ongoing fight for justice. At the time of her death, Ellen was 27 years old, and the circumstances surrounding her passing remain unsettling, to say the least. I'm not going to go into all the details because there are so many, and it's a case you have to just hear for yourself. You may recall that she sustained 20 stab wounds to her chest, abdomen, head, and neck, and she was found with multiple bruises. She was eventually found by her fiancé, Sam Goldberg. He discovered her in their shared apartment and called 911. Initially, her death was ruled a homicide, but the ruling was later changed to a suicide. Since then, Ellen's parents have relentlessly worked to have the decision overturned. And in fact, in July of 2024, they were granted the right to challenge the suicide ruling and are now building their case. So there's always new updates in the status of their fight for justice. But that isn't the main update I have for everyone today.
Oh my gosh.
This new update happened just a couple days ago. In December of 2024, Sam Goldberg has come forward with his first ever public statement regarding what happened 13 years ago.
Please tell me what he had to say.
So for 13 years, he has been completely silent. And what he chose to say is a little bit shocking given everything the family has been going through to fight for justice. Or maybe it's not so shocking because the family is looking at him as the offender. So Sam said, "When Ellen took her own life, it left me bewildered. She was a wonderful and kind person who had everything to live for. And this is something that he wrote in a statement for a CNN investigation. He continued, when she died, a part of me died with her. Unimaginably, in the years that have passed, I have had to endure the unimaginable passing of my future wife and the pathetic and despicable attempts to desecrate my reputation and her privacy by creating a narrative that embraces lies, distortions, and falsehoods in order to avoid the truth. He continued, mental illness is very real and has many victims. I hope and pray that you never lose someone you love like I did to a terrible disease and then be accused by ignorant and misinformed people of causing her death. Now, as people covering this case publicly, it's important for us to note that Sam Goldberg was never charged with any crime in connection to Ellen's death. That's something we have to legally say. And some facts about him since her passing is nearly 3 years after her passing, he married another woman. And to this day, for 13 years, he has consistently denied any involvement in her death, despite 13 years of ongoing speculation. However, the Greenberg family remains steadfast in their pursuit of justice for Ellen, and they continue their efforts to uncover the truth and seek accountability for whoever may be responsible.
Immediately, the centering to himself, that statement, it was just so loud that statement was centered around himself and, his quote reputation of when his fiance had, 20 stab wounds?
Yeah.
Again, in that statement, claiming she took her own life is so gross. I get, as a human that has been through what he's been through in terms of his reputation during this case, I get why, you're going to be tempted to talk like that. But if this was your fiance and you really loved her, I just don't feel like it would sound like that. It just sounded like he only cared to take care of himself and that's it. And I hope you never have to go through what I went through and my reputation. None of this. I miss her every day. None of what you would expect to hear from somebody who grieved or is still grieving a fiance. I don't buy any of it. And it feels very narcissistic to me.
I honestly think that it would have been better for him to have stayed quiet and not release this statement. I'm not sure why he decided to say something now after 13 years of being quiet. However, I can understand why he holds this opinion, because if it wasn't suicide, everyone who isn't already looking at him is going to look at him. And it is frustrating to hear the words that he had to say because it felt dismissive of her death. It felt dismissive of everything that she went through. And it's dismissive of the professionals, whether that's a medical examiner, whether that's investigators who have looked into the case and said that there was no way that Ellen could have done this to herself.
It's obviously dismissive of her family as well and what they believe happened to her. I guess he does disagree, so maybe that wouldn't matter to him, but it's a wild statement.
I think it actually was a statement to the family. It was his way of getting his message across because he does say, and then be accused by ignorant and misinformed people of causing her death.
That's them.
That's them.
That's them. Oof, man.
So he's still at war despite being quiet this whole time.
I think he really thinks he did something there and won a battle of this war that you mentioned with that letter. But actually, I don't think it did what he was hoping it would do. He looks defensive. He looks angry. And I think many people would agree with the family in changing it from that suicide ruling. And I know it's been a while since we covered the case, so some of the details are a little bit hazy, so please excuse me. But I still can barely understand how suicide even became a thing in this case after 20 stab wounds. It's very disheartening, but I am glad they got it changed. I have two that I'd like to include here. One is Anita Knutson. A motion was filed in October to extend this trial yet again, and it was already extended. It was supposed to start in June. So this case may see some developments in 2025 in terms of possible convictions, sentencing, or whatever the result of the trial may be for Nicole Rice, who was arrested and charged with Anita's murder. Nicole was arrested in 2022, March. So it's kind of wild to me that 2.5 years later, we're still here. A trial hasn't started and they're trying to extend it. But that's just like a quick little update for Anita Knutson. And another more lengthy update is about the Natalee Holloway case. This case is very, very publicly known, so you may be aware, but in October of 2023, the man who she was supposedly last seen with, right, Joran Vandersloot, he was found guilty of wire fraud against her parents. So he was doing like gross stuff against them. All that kind of like white collar stuff, I'm not that interested in getting totally in the details with, but he's basically trying to extort them out of money, which is so gross. And then he did also give a confession that same month of killing Natalee Holloway. So after almost 2 decades of vanishing in Aruba, there is a confession. He said that he murdered her with a cinder block on that Aruban beach where she was with him after she had gone out that evening in 2005. Supposedly, he did this because she rejected his sexual advances. That's according to a transcript of an interview with his attorney. He said that she kneed him in the crotch after he had tried to feel her up, and he responded by kicking her in the face and then bludgeoning her with that cinder block. He then, quote, pushed her off into the ocean, and her body still has not been found. She is declared legally dead, though, since 2012. In terms of the like extortion or whatever, the money stuff, he was supposedly trying to sell information to her mom for $250,000, which is so gross. So all of this going on at the same time, right? Like he's trying to get money out of them. He's probably feeling very ready to confess. And so he's like trying to get money for it first. And then he ended up, although taking a plea deal that did benefit himself, but apparently also the Holloway family. He was sentenced to 20 years for the financial crimes, trying to get $250,000. And that is unfortunately running simultaneously with his prison sentence that's in Peru, where he's already been convicted of killing another woman and trafficking cocaine. So he just has from money crimes to drug crimes to murder. This guy is where he needs to be, which is prison in Peru, which I don't know if you know, but South American prisons are not your friendliest prisons. Not that any prison is friendly, but they're not. So I hope he's having a horrible time. I will say, though, that horrible time will likely not exceed 35 years unless he's given a life sentence. He is currently scheduled for release from prison in Peru on or about July 10th, 2045, which is 35 years after his arrest for the other woman that he murdered. He supposedly was or will be temporarily released to the U.S. to face the extortion and wire fraud charges. So we'll see what happened with that or research a little bit more on that for any updates as that happens or has happened. When researching for this episode, I couldn't find much more, though. I will say this, call it karma, call it what you will, but Joran Vandersloot was attacked in that prison in Peru. He was attacked by 2 inmates while he was in a common area in April of this year. He suffered bruises and lacerations because there was a knife of some type involved, I believe. There was no more details that were given, though, because Peru's National Penitentiary Institute didn't want to confirm like any of those specific details that went further. So he's having the time he deserves, maybe not even as bad.
There's a lot going on with that particular case, and it's heartbreaking that this family has to continually be re-traumatized by everything that this man is putting them through.
It is really wild when you think that this happened, while you and I are in high school and never forgetting it because of just the proximity and age and everything and how long it's been. I mean, we're going on 20 years this late spring that this happened. And as you mentioned, still things going on with it. Hopefully now that there's a confession, her family can rest a little easier in terms of needing to search for those answers and everything. I don't think you ever fully rest going through these things, but I hope that it can bring them a certain amount of peace that is definitely due to them. But yeah, it took 20 years to finally get that confession that, of course, her family, the legal system, and the court of public opinion, if you will, have all sort of been expecting. It really wasn't questioned that he had something to do with it. It was too obvious for so long. And I think it was long overdue and probably will never be enough. But the confession gives something, a very small something, but
speaking of obvious guilty parties, the last update we have for this year's episode of Case Updates is the case of Dee Ann Warner. She is the Michigan woman who disappeared in 2021 under mysterious circumstances. We covered Dee Ann's case in December 2022. She went missing after allegedly ending her marriage to her husband, Dale Warner. And he claimed at the time that she had left the country with a wealthy man, despite her actually being independently wealthy on her own. And authorities and Dee Ann's family did not believe that. They suspected foul play from the very beginning. In 2023, things took a dark turn when Dale was arrested for her murder, even though Dee Ann's body hadn't been found at the time. Now, in a major development this year, 2024, we've learned that human remains found on the Warner family property have been confirmed to be Dee Ann Warner. Police have confirmed the remains match her dental records, and that was able to put to rest any doubts about her identity. However, the manner of her death has been determined and will remain withheld at this time, so we don't know exactly what happened pending further investigation. But her death was officially ruled a homicide. Her brother, who is mentioned in the episode coverage that we did, is named Greg Hardy, and he shared his relief and emotional response to the news, saying, "This conclusion of the medical examiner unequivocally saying he had a perfect match with the dental records. And so there was absolutely no doubt in his mind in signing a death certificate with the identification of it being my sister was such a reassuring event, and it made it final." The remains were discovered on August 16th during a search of the Warner property on Paragon Road in Tipton, Michigan. Michigan State Police crews found the body inside a tank that's typically used for storing ammonia. It's a chemical commonly used in fertilizer for crops, and that was something that they had a lot of. They lived on a farm. So this discovery brings us one step closer to understanding the full story behind Dee Ann's tragic death. But obviously, there's still a lot of unanswered questions, and it's an ongoing investigation, and I'm sure there'll be a trial pretty soon.
That is a massive update and a really important one in that finding the remains is a huge thing in a case. It's very important for just a lot of information. I'm not in law enforcement, so I don't want to give a bunch of details pretending I know everything, but I know that it is one of the keys to a case. Having the remains, having a crime scene that you tie a particular suspect to, and having a weapon, that is really what you need to be able to have a successful conviction. So this is a huge moment in the case, and I hope that not only does it bring peace to her family and her brother, but that it brings a few more answers that they may need.
Absolutely. And just reading the brother's words, it obviously was an earth-shattering event to take place in his life, in her children's life, in all of her loved ones' lives. But this identification of her body, this locating of it, is really going to give him that ability to move to the next step and handle whatever comes with the trial and the rest of the investigation.
There may be more updates yet to come in 2025 surrounding this case. That about wraps up these updates for 2023, 2024. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week. And remember,
stay safe.
Bye.